So, hello everyone, for all of you here. My name is James. I'm a former world champion kayaker. I'm a current member of the GB team, and I'm currently 6th in the world. And I did all of this on a vegan diet, which we adopted, I think, about towards the end of 2010 is when we first went onto a vegan diet. And this is my wife, Katya.
Hi. And I was a member of Russian freestyle team for quite a few years. And yeah, I retired from competition for past 3 years. But before that, I was competing on a vegan diet and doing better than anyone in Russian team. And we'll get to it as we do a presentation. Yeah, you can play the video.
But since obviously most of you might know what kayaking is, do you all know what kayaking is? Yeah. So what we compete at is a sport called freestyle kayaking, which is very hard to explain, so I'll let the video show you what we do.
Explain it better.
This is from a competition in 2011. So I hope that gives you a bit of a glimpse into our sport. This is like the very top end of it. So it was 25 of the world's best kayakers was invited to that. So this is even quite different to where we usually compete. This is quite a privilege to get to compete there. So that's about as good as it gets, really. in terms of the kind of rapids and white water we get to compete on. But we'll go back in time a little bit as to how we got there and how a vegan diet helped us along the way. So growing up, I was quite a shy, skinny kid, and I was often getting sick, often getting infections, and I think because I was so shy, I was always looking for something to excel at. So I tried lots of different sports. I tried skateboarding, rollerblading, hockey, all kinds of things. And then I found surfing, which we would do in the summer holidays every year. And this was like my first love and first time I felt like I was starting to do well at something. But living where we do, which is near Manchester, it's not the greatest place to be the world's best surfer. And then, I think when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I found kayaking, which was actually, I saw it on TV. A guy ran some huge waterfall, and I was, oh, Dad, maybe we can find a canoe club, maybe I can start that. So anyway, you don't start out on huge rapids or anything. You start off usually in a swimming pool or in a lake in the summer, somewhere warm and safe where you can fall in as much as you want. And that's how I started, really. And then after I learned the basics, quite quickly I started competing. And as a junior, I did pretty well. I think I won like Euro Cups and British Championships and stuff like this. And then as I got older, in 2008, we was competing in, I think it was World Cups and Europeans, so I think I was about 19 at the time. And this is when we first met.
21 you was.
21, okay. Obviously didn't do maths that well. And we was competing at all the same time. So she was competing for Russia, and I was competing for England. So we was meeting on the World Cups and then Europeans, and this is how we started to get to know each other. But at the time, as I went from junior to senior, obviously it's much harder to do well, and I started to lose focus as to what I was doing. And she was quite motivated kayaking, but still we wasn't looking after ourselves at all. We was partying and drinking, and I was going quite destructive. And this is the kind of lifestyle you can see. So we lived in Uganda, so when you're there, like, there's not really any rules or anything, so you can easily go quite wild. And we was really not looking after ourselves. We were still kayaking every day, just very unfocusedly, and I wasn't competing at the time. And I was getting malaria very often and all kinds of sicknesses. Like, health was really declining. I saw it in a lot of people around that after some time doing this, I was like, if we continue this way, we're not going to do anything good, and it's really not going to be...
Not going to last.
Not going to be a good way to live a long time, which is what I always wanted to do.
And here, so at some point, this is me in the past, I discovered myself in Uganda kayaking for 5 hours a day and kind of starting to get fat, and I didn't like it. So I was start to look for maybe change something in the diet or something. We was just on a normal diet, at whatever was there, and drunk also. Almost every evening, so it also could be related. But also, what other thing I discovered, that I am developing this very muscular top of the body, because our sport is very like high impact on the top body, and I didn't like how I start to look like a little bit more like a male. And so in one book I came across raw vegan diet. And we wasn't even close to thinking about vegetarianism or veganism or anything to do with animals. I was just wanting to get a bit skinnier and maybe look better and maybe feel more energy. And so I wanted to try it, and I tried. And what is I got attracted to is to just common sense. We are, it's not that great to see here, but we are part of the hominids family, which is great apes, and all of them, they quite, when we lived in Uganda, we could see our similarities very, very obviously, and so I thought, and especially our Ugandan people, because we lived next to the village, right on our side of the river, and we saw how people live very simply with just mud huts and like with their kids, and it's not that far away from, you know, from our closest ancestors. And they also add a lot of fruit, just whatever is growing there, and very little meat, and they was very muscular as well because they did a lot of hard physical work. And not many of them was fat as well. So I looked at what we're supposed to eat as a species, and it just made so much sense that all of them eat fruit as a primary source of calories, and then quite a lot of vegetation, things like vegetables, leaves and stems and all the green stuff which grow in there, and they often mix it with fruit, and then some flowers, and then some occasional nuts, roots and insects and whatever, like it's opportunistic, whatever they can find, but they're not really hunters as such. And it made so much sense to me, and I looked at what could I eat, and it pretty much looked quite good, and especially in Uganda it looked like this. So I tried, and I very quickly started to lose extra weight, and also my muscles became less inflamed, so the shoulders in like just a couple of weeks became normal, not male, like female looking one, and I could train for 5 hours a day like I did before, but felt more energy. And I gone off meat very quickly without even thinking about it, because I felt great. I felt a lot of energy.
So at about the same time, so she was starting to eat more and more raw vegan diet, and I was eating a lot of what she was making, and I was also eating all the normal food too. But I was eating both, and I was getting interested because I could see it's working, and she's doing well. So I was curious about it, and completely unrelated. But by chance, I was looking at how I could do better in kayaking, because at this point we was already looking for how to be healthier. So it already curtailed drinking and all these things, was taking lots of other steps to try and make ourselves better athletes. And I was reading this book by Kelly Slater, who was my hero when I was growing up. He's an 11-time world champion surfer. He's the youngest and the oldest world champion in surfing. Anyway, I was reading a book by him, and he mentioned that he tried a raw vegan diet at some point and really felt huge benefits in terms of recovery. And our sports has a lot of similarities in terms of it's very high impact, which probably surfing even more so. So the quicker you can recover, the better you can do. And so I was reading this, and then going alongside seeing the results it was having with Katya, and I was thinking, okay, well, maybe it is worth to try then. And at this point, we was just about to head back to Europe to start competing for that season and taking it seriously. So he was actually training, and so I was thinking, okay, this is the best time to actually try this. We'll go full force into it and see how we do. So it was had a very busy year this year. It was like leading up to the World Championships. We competed all over the world and was stopped drinking completely. We adopted a completely raw vegan diet and began training as well. So our sport's very technical. Most of it's actually technique, so you don't have to be super, super strong. Obviously that helps, but technique is the most important thing. It doesn't matter how strong you are, if you don't have the technique, you won't do well. So I'd never really done any sort of other training. And so this year, which is still nothing compared to most athletes, but I started running every day, doing press-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, all kinds of body weight stuff. Because we're often nowhere near a gym, you can't rely on gym training. But I actually started to do this year. So it wasn't just diet, it was everything combined.
This was 2010, leading up to 2011 Worlds.
So it was, this is in Canada, a competition you just saw. This is Katya. This is me on the same wave. This is actually in Uganda on the right, and this is Canada on the left.
And this is what our sport is all about. You do tricks. You go in the air and you twist. You do like a somersaults forward and backward and sidewards, and you get 45 seconds on the wave, and you show what you can do, and if you get the most amount of points, you win the competition.
And as you can imagine, like water, when it's moving fast, it's like a concrete. And the power of water, if you ever just walked out into the sea and got hit by a wave, you'll know how impactful it can be. So recovery is a huge part of our sport. And this is in Galicia in Portugal, also that year. So the main thing, we had a 6 month, like 3 months period before the World Championships in 2011, which is a competition I'd been sort of eyeing up as one that would be a good event for me to really train for. And you basically camp out right next to the wave and train every day for hours on end. And many people was doing this at this time. And it's very brutal on the body, and people was really sleeping a lot, us too. And then when we adopted this diet, our sleep went right down. So still more than you would do ordinary, you were still recovering, but way less than we were. And prior to adopting a vegan diet, was often getting sinus infections, especially in this location where we competed there previously. And as soon
because the water is not clean there,
it's quite dirty water.
It gets everywhere, and you get lots of infections, and many people are sick with their stomachs. And people, just to recover from impact, they were sleeping for like 13 hours a day. And this is what we used to do, but then we switched to this diet, and just in a few weeks we start to sleep like 9 hours a day, which meant that our recovery is better.
So as well as like stopping to get sick, the other aspect we noticed in this time that a lot of our competitors was getting injured, and they was carrying injuries and like they was breaking muscles, nothing like too severe, but stuff that would keep them off the water for a week here and there, or stop them from being able to train to the full amount. The reason for this, which I didn't really realise at the time, but now realise, looking back, is when you're having a normal, conventional Western diet, you're having all this food that's sedating your neurological system and stopping the signals from even reaching you, and you can so easily ignore your body when it's telling you you're going to break yourself. Athletes, they're often pushing themselves to the point when it's only a little thing can go wrong and you straight away break a muscle or a tendon or something. When we adopted a vegan diet, it's a lot less sedation happening to your neurological systems. These signals, you can't ignore. You can ignore them if you really want to, but you're aware of them. It's much harder to override these signals. So the biggest signal your body tells you is self-preservation, how to not hurt yourself, how to keep yourself alive. So when you can hear your body saying, oh, if you can do this, you're going to break a muscle, you can hold back a little bit, and you can deliberately not hurt yourself, which means because you're aware of these things, you can control it. So when you really have to, you can put yourself in the right frame of mind, so you can push yourself that far if you really need to, like when it's life or death, or it's the finals of a competition or something. You can push yourself an extra mile. But you can also choose to hold back a little bit, which means that in training, you can train more regularly because you're not breaking yourself every training session. You can push yourself almost there, but then go straight back the next day, so you get more time on the water. In a technical sport like ours, that makes a huge difference. It means you're more used to the features, your tricks are more perfected, so it may make a big difference. And ultimately, that led me to winning the Worlds that same year. So it's 6 months or 7 months after we changed our diet, and it resulted in me winning the World Championships. And I think a large part of that was I was a lot fresher by the time we got to the finals than my competitors. Especially my main competitor, he's a much bigger guy than me, as Peter on the left. So he's about 20 kilograms heavier than me, and at the time was mostly muscle. But he was often carrying injuries he relied so much on power that he was often like breaking his pec especially, and other things. So it made a big difference. But ultimately, winning Worlds was like a dream, like I said, from childhood. I dreamt from very young of being the best at something. It wasn't kayaking before until I discovered it, but once I found kayaking and it seemed to fit well with me, it was like a life dream to win the World Championships, and it was amazing. However, after 3 days, you quickly realise it's not everything. It's a wonderful experience, but it doesn't actually change nearly as much as you might think. So I lost motivation a little bit because I was still competing and doing well, but I didn't have quite the same fire as I did before that in kayaking, because obviously it's very difficult to motivate yourself to do the same thing again unless you have an alternative reason to do it. So, and also because I devoted so much of my life to kayaking, I didn't go to university or anything, I didn't have a profession. What I did have, when we lived in Uganda, I used to make money filming the rafting trips, so I knew how to film. So I wanted to have some kind of profession and something that would be useful in some other ways I could influence the world in a positive direction. So from adopting the vegan diet, although originally the motivation wasn't the ethics and environment and all this aspect, that came quite quickly. As soon as we stopped having animal products in our diet, quite quickly you're like, actually, what was I thinking? Like, I was actually a vegetarian a lot of my childhood for the reason that I didn't want to kill animals. But then I kind of lost sight of that as I got more and more into sport. But then that all sort of came back to me, and I wanted to find ways to utilize my profile and skills in better directions. So as well as learning a profession. So I got quite heavily into filming and developed my skills to use cameras. Like even shot a feature film in 2015, and we also film all kinds of stuff for good causes too. So like recently we were filming with Fiona Oakes at our animal sanctuary to help her there, and various other things like that. And then because obviously we were experienced in the outdoors and the extreme environments, I ended up working on and being a part of the team who ran a first descent in Bhutan with Steve Bagshaw, which actually it's on TV tomorrow at 8 PM on Dave, which our TV show goes out. And we basically had to go down this completely unknown river. We had no idea what it would be like when we started, and actually it was a lot more full on than we expected. And for 1.5 weeks, we was on the river completely miles from being able to get off the river to civilization or anything. It's a beautiful country, it's absolutely pristine. It has 70% tree cover of the entire country, and they like viciously protect it. So you have very strict rules as to who can come in, how long you can be there, what areas you can go, and it's their pride of the country is how pristine it is, and it really shows. I've never been anywhere like it. But on this river, this is Aldo is the second, is on the far right. He's an ex-Royal Marine. Steve is obviously a very strong guy who's been in the outdoors, battling in jungles and mountains and stuff for years. So these are tough people. And on the trip, I was the only one who didn't get sick in any way, because obviously we was getting pushed to our limits physically every day of the expedition, because you're carrying huge amounts of gear around. It's cold in the bottom of the gorge. It's very cold, and it's stressful because every day you're making decisions that could result in someone dying or not dying. How to approach these things, your brain's working overtime, so it runs people down. And then as well as that, you're not in control of the food they're getting. So I had my food with me, but they was all eating their normal rations, like dried food, so along with whatever they could find from the Bhutanese guys brought along. And so they all came down with various sort of stomach illnesses at some point during the trip, and I was the only one who didn't, which it could be chance, but I think it's most likely because of the resilience and recovery you get from being on a diet. I was also the first one awake every morning, and it was noticeable, especially when we got to the end of the trip, how much more energy I had. So I was part of the kayaking team, but because I was the cameraman, it meant I was sprinting ahead a lot of the time, like running the rapids first, hopping out, climbing, filming them, and then having to catch up. So I was really physically working very hard, and I can only really think that this is well-trained individuals I was with. So I'm saying the diet helped a lot. Yeah, I should say as well, so I used to get sick a lot, but since 2011, I haven't been sick once, apart from one time I got malaria, and that was actually a day when I had some cooked food. I came down with malaria the same day. And anyway, so in this time when I was learning how to be a cameraman, I wasn't competing, so I stopped competing in 2015 and completely didn't kayak for 3 years. And then, because I was feeling like I spent my whole childhood being very active, and at some point I started to feel like I'm getting a bit, I'm not moving around enough, I should probably start to do things. And I got inspired by a few vegan bodybuilders that I should maybe actually start to lift weights. And as soon as I started to lift weights, I got stronger quite quickly and started to develop muscle again. And I thought, I want to use it. So when it was my birthday that year, it was 2018, it was my birthday, and I thought, I should go kayaking. I haven't done it really for 3 years at that point. So I just went at the weekend, and it seemed to go much better than I thought, and I enjoyed it. So then I went the next weekend, and just not like I would do in the past full time, but I just kept going every so often. And then we had a new GB team trials was coming up in March this year. So this is about 4 years after I've last competed. And I thought, the British team is one of the strongest, so I had no illusions that it would be difficult to actually make the team, especially after so long off. And I wasn't fully aware of I didn't really know what everyone else was doing, what level it was, so I had no real expectation going in. I thought I had a reasonable chance to make it, but I didn't know. Anyway, it went very well, and I ended up in 4th place making the team, and it's a real, we have some of the best kayakers in the world from the UK. We have a very good infrastructure here.
The 5 best go in the team.
Yeah. And then when it came to Worlds, which was just this July, my goal is actually for the World Championships that are coming to England in 2020. So my thought was going to this Worlds that if I made the top 20, this would be fantastic. But really, I just wanted to see how everyone was doing, so I had some idea of what amount of work I had to do. So I pretty much... I just did. So the World Championships is coming to Nottingham in 2020. This Worlds was in Spain, in Sort, in July this year. So we went there, and if I made top 20, that was my goal I really wanted to do, and everything else was just about seeing how I'm doing. And bearing in mind that everyone pretty much in the top 20 trains full-time at this, whereas I've had the weekends leading up to it, and then a few weeks before selection, and then 3 weeks before the competition to train. So I knew I was at a bit of a disadvantage in time actually in the boat. But in the first round, I ended up in 11th place, so I was like really happy with that already. And then that's top 20 go through to quarterfinals. The next round is to cut to the top 10, and I managed to move up one little place into 10th position. And then the semi-finals, I ended up in 6th. So I was the top British paddler, and I was above everyone I used to compete against, people who've been doing this continuously. So it was completely surprised me, and I was like really happy with how I did, and it was a great event. And what was also noticeable was the people, also I hadn't seen a lot of these people who I've grown up competing with since 14 years old. I hadn't seen them for 4 years. And in this time, I was quite surprised seeing them, how noticeable it was, how much they'd aged in this time. So obviously some of the juniors on the team hadn't been on the team with me when I was doing well in the past. So they'd seen me now and they presumed that I was in my mid-20s. I'm actually 31, almost 32. So they were surprised that I'm as old as I actually am. And I was shocked at seeing how some of the people who I'd been with who are on a normal diet, and obviously athletes in general who are on a normal diet will quite often consume a lot more animal products than an ordinary person would do. So I think that is exaggerated. Anyway, so it was a great experience being back competing and showing what my motivation this time, because I wanted to show the benefits I'd felt from the vegan diet, from starting training again, getting strong again, and really feeling like I'm thriving. And in the past we got ridiculed on this diet, even up to when we won Worlds. Then a few people apologised and understood why we made the changes, because it still was quite an unusual thing to be a vegan and competing in sport. Now it's obviously much more accepted. But coming back this time, there was none of it. There was all people who used to ridicule me was asking me questions about, okay, what do I eat? Like, how does it work? Why do I do it? Like, they was actually curious as to what's working. They couldn't argue that obviously they knew I hadn't been training like they'd been doing, and how I could come back in and do well. The main motivation for me coming in was to see how I could do and to show the benefits, especially as you get older, the more you can show. This is hard.
Yeah, and for me in these years, obviously I didn't have such an early start as he did, because in Russia, in my city, which is 1.5 million people city, we was the first kayakers who was starting, and I was, at the time, was 18, so it was quite a bit later. So Russian team is not that strong. However, in 2008, for the first year, I qualified for the Russian team, and I went for all this competition circuit around the Europe, and I was amazed how everyone kayaking so good. Like, the English team was like a gods for us, because we couldn't do anything very much. And to compete in the world's finals, it was for me like way too out of my imagination. However, in 2013 and 2015, I was able to make the final, and in 2015 I was 4th. So final is the top 5, and this was for the first time for a Russian team to ever be in the final and compete for the medals. So I was pretty happy with these results, and I felt stronger and stronger with every year, and probably my main problem was not recovery or anything, it was nerves. It's just down to I wasn't used to competing as I was a child, and if you do it when you're a child and you get comfortable with competition environment, you don't get so nervous. But if you start when you are like 23 or something, then you get a little bit more nervous. But over time it was getting less and less. Yeah. So in the winters we was living in Uganda, which is a tropical country on equator, and we was eating a lot of local fruit and socializing with the kids there, and there it was very, very obvious because malaria is everywhere and people get sick quite often. And how many times did you get
I did 7 times in like 1 year when we were there.
So I never had malaria personally, and after we changed our diet, he stopped to have it. And there was only one time when everyone around was having malaria and we wouldn't have malaria, but it was one morning where when we went to a city, for some reason we had some cooked food and he tried some eggs for first time in like a very long while. And in the evening he got the symptoms. And this is not just by chance. The thing is, when you live there and there's malaria all over the place, it's in your blood. As soon as your immune system goes down, you catch it. Like this parasite in your blood start to multiply. And so he had to take the medication. His body responded with the immune system drop to the diet which he is not used to. And this is why he got malaria. And it was very, very obvious to us. And then after that, we thought maybe, okay, maybe don't come back to it ever. So for me, I always had eczema. Like when I was a child, I had allergies. And later through university, I always had eczema on my fingers. And only changing the diet made it go away. It took some time, but it went away completely and never come back. I'm completely free from it. Yeah, the other thing, what also changed, that we stopped get sick. Like we just never get sick. No normal colds, no headaches, no stomach problems, nothing like this. And this was completely new. And all these effects start to build up and start to make me think and question, maybe I should take it into a bit more serious level. And so my profession, I'm a fine arts artist. So I had 13 years of proper education, and we did all the nude studies, and it was 8 years of university, and I finished it with honor, so it's like the best marks you can get. And I was doing this, I was doing commercials and all sorts of oil paintings and murals and stuff to support my kayaking, because it's not such a big sport and you need money to travel, obviously. So I would do some portraits or something, some orders, and then sell it, and then we would go train for like half a year or something. And then I realized that the diet has such a profound effect on the health that I wanted to go into this rather than continue do arts. I mean, I still do it from time to time, but it's not it's not that important anymore. And also, I was looking at my mom. So that's my mom. She is 68 years of age. And I didn't convince her or anything, I didn't try to, but she looked at us, how we do it, and she started to change her diet. She slowly went off the meat, and then went off the animal products, and then went more into fresh fruits, vegetables, organic stuff, greens, and her health really went up, and she lost some extra, maybe 10 kilos. And she started to feel like exercising, so she started to go to a gym and do some Pilates, stretching, some gentle stuff in the beginning. And first she was going 3 times a week. And then she felt like, well, I actually have time and energy, maybe I go 5 times a week. And she started to go 5 times a week. And as you can see, she can do splits. She lifts a little bit of weight to maintain muscle. She started to run not that long ago. And now she can run 16 kilometers. And this is longer than she ever could run in her entire life, even when she was like 30 years old. And she says it's easy. It's actually not that hard anymore. In the past, it used to be very hard. And this is acro yoga. She found it recently and very liked it. And then she took up diving. And my mom, she lives in Siberia, and this is in the middle of the biggest continent on earth, so as far from the sea as you can get. And also the winter is pretty long, and it's minus 30 in the winter. So what they do, they go to the lakes, dig the ice out, and it's like this thick, you know, like 1 meter or more, take it out, put on dry suits, and it's like minus 20 outside, and they go into the water and dive and use a flashlight to navigate and stuff like this. And this is what she does. And she took it up when she was like 65 or something, and she's 68 now, and she do it consistently. It's something she always wanted to do as she was younger, but never had time because 3 kids, because, you know, jobs and stuff like this. And now she is retired and she has time, so she's doing all these things. She's doing mountain skiing. She jumped from the plane with a parachute. She did paragliding, and yeah, so that's the life. And so what I did, I started go more into nutrition side, and for a year I had a little vegan business, vegan and raw vegan desserts to order, and also I was doing this kind of events to sell the food. And it was a nice time, but it wasn't deep enough. So I studied nutrition more properly, got the certificate, and now I work with people with all sorts of health conditions, and this is such a rewarding and interesting work. And this is some of the food which I created for people out of completely healthy ingredients without any additives, and this is also even salt-free and sugar-free and oil-free. So people can recover from cancer, from severe heart disease, from being severely overweight and stuff like this, and don't harm themselves with food. And
I think it's got damaged in the
got
tumble.
damaged, okay. Anyway, so last year with one of my friends, this is my friend, she was sick for 4 years. And it's a neurological condition which is very not that common, and doctors don't really know how to deal with it. And because I was studying all this health stuff and I was keeping in contact with her, I actually recognized the symptoms, and I said, well, I know what to do. And but at the time, the thing is with neurological conditions, neurology is when your mind doesn't work in quite exactly how you wish it to work. So people not entirely can understand what their condition is, and you need to work with them hands-on. So I flew back to Siberia, and I went to the place where she was. I took her out of there, and went to her parents, like a summer house, and we started running every day. We started to go for swims, for cold swims and exercise, and she started to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And in the 3 weeks, we did a 10 kilometers race. And then in the 4 weeks, we bought the tickets and went to the south of Russia and ran around Black Sea, 700 kilometers. That's some pictures of this run. And it took some time. Yeah,
We have a Mac, so when we save things, we can't tell if it works on PC till we...
Anyway, we saw some amazing places, and she really got stronger in this time, and we did it all on a vegan diet, and on the raw vegan more precisely. And she healed. She became quite strong, and she actually stayed on the south for a while and spent there next year till recently. So that kind of stuff I do with people, and also because of this experience with you, I started ultra running. So I came back from this trip, and I was just so used to running that I thought, oh, let's just see how much I can run in one day. And so for my 35th birthday, I decided to, he was an expedition in Bhutan, so I was alone at home, and I felt it's no good to sit at home on my birthday. So I went to the Peak District by foot just to see how much I can run in one day, because I was curious. And so I ran 60 kilometers, 66 in first day. And then next day I felt a little bit sore, so I did some proper stretching, and I did like 17 kilometers, like recovery kind of run, jog, walk. And then next day I kind of needed to go back home. So I ran back home, and this was 78 kilometers. And for people who are not familiar with ultra running, you can't just do it, you know, anytime. Something's gonna break. It's a very long distance. And I was used to running, but I never run longer than 21 kilometers in one go. And this was like a huge jump. And my body was able to recover. And it is down to the diet and stretching regime that I was able to recover. And actually, I felt quite good. It felt very, very nice. And when you run so much, food tastes so good. You cannot imagine. It's like just apple tastes amazing. The amount of pleasure you get from apple is more than you got from the best chocolate cake you ever had in your life. So I you know, maybe you get inspired and then try do it myself. And then in February I thought, why don't I enter some ultra marathon or something? And I find one next to the home, and I thought, well, maybe in the beginning of March it will be a good weather and it will be a nice sunny spring day. And so yeah, I picked that date, and it was 2 days, 50 kilometers in one day and 50 on the second, so it was a weekend. And it was up and down, so it's 1,500 meter elevation each day. It's quite a bit for if anyone familiar. So it's 100 kilometers altogether. And of course, this was the weekend where we had the worst weather in the whole year. It snowed, it was hail for 2 days, and it was ferocious winds. So it was an experience, but a very interesting one. And then sometimes on the New Year with my husband, we just went and ran around the Anglesey. We wanted to do it before New Year comes in, but we didn't make it. It was 155 kilometers in one go without any sleeping over or anything. So it took us 33 hours, but we was quite slow, and many of it was actually walking, especially at night, because the terrain, as you can see, not always a trail. Sometimes it was a boggy, and sometimes it was like knee deep and all sorts of stuff. But it's interesting experience when you go on for 30 hours, and the last 30 kilometers we actually ran with pretty good speed, and I was very impressed because my husband is not really a runner.
I ran like 20 kilometers the whole year before that.
Yes.
Like I don't run.
So stuff like this, the point is your body, if you look after it, it's very good and give it a good fuel, it's extremely resilient, it will adapt and it will recover. And anyone can experience it, and even my mom can experience it. And here is, this May we went with my mom, that's my mom there, with my husband, and one of my clients, this woman here, she has stage 4 cancer, breast cancer, an operable tumor, quite a big one, and we started to work with her, and we managed to reduce it quite a bit, and bring her vitality and strength to the point that she was able to go with us, and for 2 weeks we was hiking non-stop and even running a little bit with a little backpack, and saw all these amazing mountains, and she was keeping up. She was very strong, and she's still pretty strong, and she's not planning on dying anymore. She was before, and the thing is with her situation, doctor said we can't really do very much. It's metastasided all over the place, in lungs, in ribs, and we can't take it out, and it's too big. And at the moment it reduced to the size that it doesn't seem to do anything. So she just keep on living. And it's not only only the diet, but the diet is quite strict regimen and very designed very specifically for it. It's also a sleeping regimen and exercising and detoxing. There's lots of elements to it, but what I mean is never too late. And this is here there with some Georgian guy, very looking very Georgian, and it's amazing produce there. And the thing is, what is very different in southern countries, all the vegetables and produce and fruits, they taste so good compared to, you know, this Netherlands tomatoes or something. And this trip, it was just such an adventure. And they both very enjoyed, and my mom was keeping up. And this is kind of food what we eat. We don't really have breakfast normally. And we have a lot of green smoothies and green juices, and first food we have around lunchtime, and it's usually quite a bit of fruit with some greens, and then we have a lot of salads. And because we are athletes, we want some protein, you know. We have a lot of stuff like stem vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower and courgettes, and also things like sprouts and greens and peas and beans and corn and sprouted chickpeas and stuff where is a lot of protein. You have to have it. If you move around a lot, you'll crave it, you'll see. But it's very easily you can do without animal products. 100%, no problem. And how many years it's been? 8 years since we haven't been eating anything, and no problem. We don't get sick, and this is an amazing strength of this diet. And if you're young and strong, you can tolerate much more processed vegan stuff. And if you are, you know, want to really maximize it, then you go more into natural stuff. That's quite very simple and easy. Anyone can do it, and there is a great satisfaction from understanding that apart from you doing the best thing for yourself, you're doing the best thing for the environment, for the, you know, innocent beings like animals, and you don't contribute to you know, the main environmental problems of our times. So
it's also a great motivation. So if you're looking good and doing well in life, being successful, and being a good example, it's a great motivation to help you, to get you to go for a run, to train, to try and look after yourself, to choose healthier options as opposed to unhealthy options, even in a vegan spectrum. If you know that people are going to look at you and that will reflect on they're much more likely to follow a similar path to you if you're a good example of the diet. So it's a great way of motivating yourself to make good choices for yourself.
Yeah. So yeah, we are on Instagram, and it's James Bebbington and Ekaterina Kulkova, and you can follow us and see how he does in the next Worlds. And I might come back to compete as well. I'm not decided yet. So the next talk, after we take a 10 minutes break now, and the next talk will be about the neurology of food choices, how we make food choices, and why people get off the vegan diets, and why some people start to crave meats, and what kind of confused signals we can get sometimes from our brain that we don't make the best choices, and how to actually make the best choices. So that's the next talk, and 10 minutes break. Thank you very much.
Thank you.